today's video is what if Nichelle didn't quit. So this idea was by Enzo 52894. Let's begin to the theory. So basically what I'm thinking is after this challenge, Julia just doesn't make the contract, or Nichelle just decides not to quit. And the votes, I think, it's never right said who gets eliminated, but I think I have some knowledge who's going to eliminate, and that is Z. You see, Z melted a pillar, which cost them the challenge. So I think if Nichelle wasn't getting eliminated, I think Caleb and Priya would have voted for Z. Nichelle and Damien would also vote for Z. And Axel would also vote for Z. So I think Z is eliminated. And we are at the merge. It's the merge cast. Obviously, Chris would still figure out MK cheating around this point as well. So it's Wayne, Julia, Ripper, Axel, Bowie, Raj, Priya, Caleb, Damien, Nichelle. So Nichelle just replaces Z. And Nichelle's athletic, but I still think Damien would win the challenge. But Julia usually gets Bowie out here. She might go for Nichelle, but I think she would still go for Bowie. Because Bowie was a bigger threat, and he's competed in more seasons. Because he came second last season, and I think Julia would find it easier to convince people to get rid of Bowie. Because she got Priya, she must convince Caleb. Because her and Caleb are working together, and she can get Nichelle and Damien. I've had Ripper and Axel. She probably can get them as well. She can't convince the Hockey Bros, but she must have convinced Damien in the original and Z. Ripper or Axel. She managed to convince the rest of the group to get rid of Bowie. Episode 7. The cooking challenge. It was Ripper, MK, and Axel. Julia, and then Nichelle would just replace Caleb, Priya. Nichelle would be with Damien, Priya, and Caleb. So I feel like MK would still be the only one on her team trying, like the original. Nichelle would be okay at this, and the Hockey Bros would still win the challenge because Julia was up pretty good at this. And Axel still gets voted off and Ripper quits, so there's not a lot to be said here. Episode 8. So this is the pinball challenge, and usually Priya wins the challenge. So I feel like Nichelle wouldn't do that great here. She's athletic, but I don't think she would do as well as Priya was in the original. So I kind of think Priya would still win the challenge. Nichelle and Julia still have their rivalry. And I'm thinking Julia and MK might try to get out Caleb. But Caleb's in an alliance, but Brie and Caleb are a couple. So she might go for Nichelle here, Caleb. But I think she would rather go for Caleb because he's a bigger threat and would likely win more challenges. So I feel like what would happen is Julia and MK vote for Caleb. They can convince the Hockey Bros. And I think Nichelle and Damien could also be convinced, because I don't think they'd like to vote for Caleb. But she realises that the Hockey Bros are quite close. But they're going to be easier to manipulate than Caleb, so I think she votes for Caleb, meaning Caleb is getting eliminated because she realises that Nichelle is going to be a person that she can get rid of fast. Realises Nichelle's quite popular. So she has Caleb in her alliance. And I think she can convince the Hockey Bros. I mean, she has 5 votes. She can go for Nichelle, she can go for Caleb. I think Nichelle and Damien would go for Caleb, so I think Caleb is eliminated. Episode 9. So now that Caleb's not here, Priya and Caleb never have that argument. So they don't really... Caleb's not trying to prove himself to Priya, trying to make things right with her. because that never happens. And the thing is with Julia and MK, I think Julia and MK aren't going to betray each other yet because they realise that Nichelle is a much bigger threat going forward. Because if they get rid of Nichelle, they would just vote each other next time. So what would happen is Nichelle just replaces Caleb then. And she can get the vote, but I don't think she'd be able to win the challenge like Caleb did. So I think Priya would now win this challenge because she's the strongest person that's here. And I think Julia and MK vote for Nichelle. Nichelle and Damien vote for Julia. Priya would also vote for Julia. And I think the Hockey Bros might go for Julia as well. So I think Julia gets eliminated. And again, that really sucks because Julia is actually one of my favourite characters, but if I'm being realistic, they would have seen her as a bigger threat, so I think they would get rid of Julia. Episode 10 is where they have to do the memories challenge. So I feel like MK would be really good at this. So I think MK would actually win the challenge in this one because she's quite sneaky and she's spying everyone on confessionals as he's won, so she would remember everything because she's really smart. So I imagine she would remember everyone. She'd imagine what everyone did and all that. So I think MK would win the challenge, and everyone's kind of concerned here. So MK goes to the Hockey Bros and says they're going to vote you off. So help me vote for Nichelle. That way you're safe. Damien and then MK tries to convince Priya, but she doesn't accept. Nichelle is the easiest in a tiebreaker. And these three would have to face someone else in a tiebreaker, so they go for Raj, because he's going to be the easier of the two. So in a tiebreaker between Nichelle and Raj, I think Nichelle would lose this tiebreaker. So I think Nichelle's out. So Nichelle would have came 6th, which is pretty cool. In episode 11... Actually, she might go for Priya here, or Nichelle. Damien wouldn't have the same vendetta against MK as he does against Julia. But he won't vote for Nichelle, so she makes a compromise and says to get rid of Priya because she realises once she gets out Priya, she has these two guys to convince them to vote for Nichelle or Damien. So she convinces Damien to vote. Damien's close friends with Priya. She convinces Nichelle because I think Nichelle's going to have a strong opinion on Priya. So I think Priya's out. Episode 12. Known's best enemy. So Damien and MK and Nichelle are the only characters that were not here in the original. So Wayne and Raj don't win, we know that. So it's between these three. Now Nichelle isn't winning the challenge. So MK's really sneaky, but Damien has ran really fast. So I do think out of these people, Damien would win the challenge. But Nichelle would realise getting rid of MK's not going to be a smart move, because if they get rid of MK, the Hockey Bros would choose each other. So MK convinces Nichelle and Damien and point out the logic of getting rid of her at this point in time, and they still go for Raj. Episode 11. So off the hook, the person they have to face their fear, and then the person who lasts the longest wins the challenge. So I think Wayne still loses. MK makes an alliance with Wayne. Damien and Nichelle. I think Damien wouldn't do that well, so he loses as well. So I think MK would win the challenge. So I think these two would vote for Damien, and the other two would... So these two vote for Nichelle, and the other two... Who do they vote for then? I think they vote for Wayne, because they don't got much of a choice. And then Damien uses his idol to save Nichelle, so I think Wayne is eliminated. Nichelle, Damien, and MK are in the finale. So Nichelle would have been the finalist. So it's like we're ended down with 2 to 3 outsiders are very close, and MK's the outsider. However, MK's not a powerhouse like Lightning, so it's a very even playing field. So Julia would be the only person to support MK, because even though people wouldn't hate MK as much as they hate Julia, she's still like cheated throughout the season. Damien and Wayne would be with Damien. Priya would be with Damien. Caleb would be with Nichelle. Axel and Ripper would be with Damien. Bowie is with Nichelle. Z would be with Nichelle. Emma, Nichelle. Millie, Nichelle. Chase, Damien, and Scaragorge just doesn't get anyone to help with, but I think she would be with MK personally. So they have to glide down the challenge. They each have to glide down. And I think the winner would be Damien. I think it would be ironic that Damien won the season. I'm going to be honest. I think Damien should have won the second season, if I'm being real. I think he actually would have been a perfect winner. Don't get me wrong. I think Wayne is a good finalist. But I think it's just Damien's such a good character. Like he's overcome it, and MK comes second, and Nichelle comes last. Nichelle and MK may be bickering the entire time. And that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. This image is would have gone if Nichelle quit. So didn't quit in season 2. So thank you for your suggestion. That's it for this one, and yeah. Peace out.